When you retire, you may get a chance to go to football heaven. This is football heaven.
In 1971, the St. Louis Cardinals drafted a fierce 290-pound competitor named Dan Dierdorf. Dierdorf headed an offensive line that yielded the fewest sacks in the NFL for 5 straight years during the 70s. This relentless right tackle punished would-be defenders, whether the Cardinals chose to run or pass.
I always thought that I went through my years in the NFL like I had blinders on, like I was a racehorse. I saw nothing but the upcoming game and my upcoming opponent. I really had the ability to rule everything else out and make it inconsequential.
Dierdorf would be denied only 1 Pro Bowl appearance from 1974 through 1980, securing his place in pro football history.
I'm proud to be here and say I made it here without having played on a great team, and I hope this validates something, not just for myself, but for every one of my teammates in St. Louis. You know, guys, you played with me for years, you lined up next to me, you saw me make mistakes, you saw me fall down. I wasn't that much better than you. Now, Conrad, I was clearly better than you, but let's not mistake this newfound humility of mine for just a complete loss of my senses. You know, there wasn't that much difference between us. And for all of you, I hope you take some satisfaction out of my being here today.
Dan Dierdorf began his television career as an NFL analyst on CBS, but then he went to the Hall of Fame of football shows, Monday Night Football. He teamed up with Hall of Famer Frank Gifford and the current Sunday Night Football play-by-play legend, Al Michaels. Dan holds the record of 12 years as a Monday Night Football analyst. He is also the recipient of the Hall's Pete Rozelle Award for broadcasting. Dan had a storied football career at the University of Michigan. He attended Canton's Glen Oak High School, setting the shot put record that stayed for 32 years. He and his Michigan teammate, Jim Brandstatter, are the University of Michigan radio broadcast team that is retiring this year. A Hall of Famer on and off the field. Hello and welcome to The Mission. I'm your host, Jameer Howardson, and as always, today we have a great show for you. Today, from the class of 1996, Pro Football Hall of Famer Dan Dierdorf is joining us right here on The Mission. Mr. Dierdorf, thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to join us. How's everything going, sir?
Jameer, it's going really well, but that was your last Mr. Dierdorf, all right? It's Dan, all right?
Thank you, Dan. Will do. Will do.
No, everything's going great. Fall is here. I'm up in northern Michigan, and the fall colors are late this year. We're pretty much at full peak right now. It's beautiful outside.
That's great, sir. Well, there is a lot of 7-0 in your world, Dan. And before we get to that, talking about your Wolverines, your Cardinals, let's jump in. Northeast Ohio, Canton native. You know, you had the golden opportunity of growing up here in Canton, Ohio, and watching the Pro Football Hall of Fame being built brick by brick. Talk about some of those fond memories, just watching this beautiful place being built and growing up in Canton, Ohio.
Yeah, you know, there are people that when they heard you right there would say, wow, he's really embellishing this whole deal. But I really did watch it being built brick by brick. I grew up just about a mile from the hall. I went with my dad. I was 13 years old when I stood there with my dad and a large group of people that we watched, the groundbreaking. And I used to ride my bike down there watching it being built. I couldn't figure out what the heck was sticking up out of the roof. You know, it's the football in the old rotunda. And I used to get off my bike and walk through it while it was being built, like all, kids do. It's just kind of fascinating to be around something like that. And then when the hall opened up, my dad was a season ticket holder. I went to every Hall of Fame game. went to every enshrinement ceremony until I started playing in the NFL myself. So it was everyone from Canton feels a special connection to the Hall of Fame, but you'd have to go a long way to feel it to the level that I do.
Glen Oak High School graduate. Not only did you play football, but you threw shot put and discus. Just talk about when you fell in love with the game and what made you fall in love with the game of football. Well,
I realized at a relatively young age that I wasn't going to be a jockey. So and when you were my size and you grew up in Canton, Ohio, playing football was just what you did. And I went to a high school that had a very strong football program. We were in the old Federal League back then, and it was my high school coach, Jim Reichenbaugh, played college football at Ohio State for Woody Hayes. And so I just, I wasn't all that good at it, to tell you the truth, early on. I was the original, just glad to be here, dum-de-dum-dum. I had such I wasn't a mean-spirited guy, let's put it that way. I didn't blossom until later down the line.
Wow, that's amazing. Upon graduation, you were looking at several universities within the Midwest, but you chose Go Blue Michigan. What was it about Michigan and head coach Bum Elliott that had you wanting to go there?
Well, it was the best. First of all, it was the best offer I had. I went on a recruiting trip to Ohio State, and they didn't offer me a scholarship. I went on a recruiting trip to Michigan State. They didn't offer me a scholarship. And so there was a connection at the University of Michigan. The defensive backfield coach at the time was a guy named Don James, who went on to become, just a record-setting coach at the University of Washington. But Don's from Massillon, Ohio, and he and my high school coach were old teammates and friends. And I will always be convinced. I signed relatively late at Michigan, and I'll always be convinced that somebody backed out of a scholarship at the last minute. And I'm telling you, I got in through the back door. And in retrospect, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Although everybody in Ohio thought I was a traitor for going to Michigan, but I had the ultimate get out of jail free card. I wasn't offered.
That's right. And now everybody who's listening to the Mission podcast, they'll know the backstory on that. But how did Michigan prepare you for the next level?
Well, Bump Elliott retired after my sophomore year. And then this guy from Miami of Ohio shows up, some guy named Bo Schembechler. And I played for Bo then my junior and senior year. And, when you play football at that level, when you're around tremendous athletes and you compete against Ohio State and Southern Cal and on and on and on, it was a great preparation for me for the NFL. And, the NFL was a little different back then. They didn't have the combine. They didn't have the level of scouting that they do today rather. So it was a little more of an imperfect science back then, but it worked out.
1971, second round, 43 overall pick, changed your life for the then St. Louis Cardinals. Tell us about that moment in time when you were drafted.
Well, it wasn't the greatest day of my life, I can tell you that, because I was under the impression I was going to go in the first round. And like a lot of guys, when the first round came and went, I did too. As a matter of fact, I left the house and went for a walk. I wasn't even home when I got drafted. And back then, the draft wasn't on TV or anything. It was actually at the end of January when they held the draft back then. There were like 17 rounds. And but after the first round, I got a I got a little upset and I left and went for a walk. I wasn't even home when the phone call came in.
So I have to ask you that, because did that give you the motivation when you went into training camp to kind of play with a chip on your shoulder, Dan?
Well, yeah, I always had a little bit of a chip, just in the sense that, but I thought I should have been drafted higher. But that, there reaches a point where that's wasted energy to worry about that. No, when I got to training camp, I was. I wasn't going to show anybody that I was upset. I was worried about making the team. When I got there, the Cardinals had a very talented offensive line with a lot of veterans, and I didn't see myself being able to start as a rookie. And I remember calling my mom and dad and telling them, I just hope I make the team. And I wasn't looking for that pat on the back. I was serious.
Well, you made the team. And fortunately, in 1974, the Cardinals went 7-0 the first 7 weeks of the season. Right. But what made that 10-4 season so special?
Well, the biggest thing that made it so special is the preceding 3 years, we were 4-9-1 each year. So I had never played on a team that had a losing season, not in high school, not at Michigan, not anywhere. And then all of a sudden I get to the Cardinals and we have a losing season my first 3 years in the league. But then a new head coach comes to town the year before, Don Coryell, and his very talented coaching staff, which included, guys like Rod Dahauer and Jim Hannafin and Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs was our running backs coach for 5 years on those Cardinal teams. How'd it work out for Joe Gibbs, huh? Not too bad.
I want everybody to know that I just got introduced by one of the greatest coaches of all time. And if you want to ask, you just take a look at this stage right now. Charlie will testify to that. Dan will, Jim Hannafin, and so will I. Don Coryell was one of the greatest coaches of all time. Thank you, Don.
So, yes, when we went 7-0, it was a very welcome change of pace.
Well, speaking of head coach Don Coryell, you and your other teammates are championing for him to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Why should Coach be here?
Well, I know that Dan Fouts is really running point on this.
The thank you I give to you is the most significant, because if it wasn't for you, Don Coryell, and an offense named Air Coryell, I most assuredly would not be here accepting this induction to the Hall of Fame.
Because of Don was such an innovator. And I think it's unfair to just judge a coach by Super Bowls. I think sometimes that the Hall of Fame voters put too much importance on whether or not I never played in a Super Bowl, and that doesn't mean I was a bad player. That just meant I wasn't drafted by Miami or Dallas or the Raiders or any of the other really strong franchises back in the 70s. But Don Coryell changed the game. His passing tree is still in use by, I'll bet you, 50% of the teams in the National Football League. I think that you need to break it down in terms of, did this man have a lasting and meaningful impact on the professional game? And I don't know of anyone who could argue that Don Coryell didn't check those boxes.
Don Coryell came to St. Louis in 1973, and one of the great thrills for me to stand up here this morning is the fact that we're having a Cardinal reunion. Because for 5 years in St. Louis, Don Coryell was our head coach, Jim Hannafin was my line coach, and Joe Gibbs was our running back coach. And folks, let me tell you something. This group comes from San Diego State. We were not overwhelmed by the fact that they were coming from San Diego State. We didn't really know a whole lot about it. But let me tell you something. They came to St. Louis in 1973, and they reinvented the way the ball was thrown in the National Football League. And every team in this league today uses some derivative of Don Coryell's passing system. And I'm just thrilled that Don is here to honor Joe today. And Don, you honor me with your presence as well. Thank you.
Well, speaking of today's game, you look at your Cardinals and 7-0 for the first time since your team did it in 1974. They go against the Green Bay Packers Thursday Night Football, have a chance to go 8-0 this far on the season. But what are your thoughts about this team led by signal caller Kyler Murray?
Well, don't we all remember him when he was at Oklahoma? And then, I would look at his size and I worried that, is this guy big enough and physically strong enough to survive in the NFL? And then when the Cardinals drafted him, I was equal parts concerned and excited. But when I see over the years, I mean, first of all, we're talking about a tremendous human being. I mean, Kyler Murray is a great guy. His teammates love him. He's great in the community. Off the field, he's everything you'd like from the guy who's, because of where he was drafted and the position he plays, he's the figurehead for the franchise. And I couldn't be happier with the way he represents the Cardinals. And let's be realistic, he's great TV. The guy is fun to watch.
Now he's going against the Green Bay Packers, led by Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, Aaron Rodgers. Oh, I forgot that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I hope, when you bring up Aaron Rodgers, it makes me, I hope football fans, NFL fans, I hope all of them at some point in time take a moment to sit back and just realize that, in the past 10 years, we have gone through and witnessed a truly golden age of NFL quarterbacks. That we saw, they overlapped to some degree, but to think that at the same time that we were watching Peyton Manning and we were watching Tom Brady and we were watching Aaron Rodgers and we're watching Drew Brees and Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, all of these guys are all going to be in Canton. Eli Manning, I've got to throw him in there. But, these guys are all going to be in Canton, and they were all playing at the same time. And Aaron Rodgers is still there, and his savvy, his athleticism, which I think a lot of people forget how he can run around and make things happen. He's still, to me, Aaron Rodgers is he's a deal breaker. Anytime you're playing the Packers, I think you're the underdog.
Yeah, it's gonna be an exciting game. And Dan, I want to take some time to talk about your broadcasting career and really, talk about how you got started in that career, because you have equally, been a Hall of Famer in that world as well as in the football world. But if you could tell us, how did you get started after football?
Well, it actually started while I was still playing for the Cardinals in St. Louis. I went to work at a radio station in St. Louis, KMOX radio, which was the home of the baseball Cardinals. It was one of the old 50,000 watt clear channel stations that had a sports department. Jack Buck was our sports director. Bob Costas was in the sports department. I mean, Bob and I grew up together working at KMOX, and I logged hundreds and hundreds of hours behind a microphone while I was still playing for the team. So I knew it's what I wanted to do, and I was just fortunate enough that I got a shot starting in radio. and then pretty quickly transitioned to television.
What was it like when you were named to the Monday Night Football cast, to that team alongside with 1987, alongside Frank Gifford and Al Michaels?
Yeah, well, it was pretty heady stuff because that's back when Monday Night Football was still Monday Night Football. I mean, it was.
Okay.
You know, the league has now transitioned. They put all their focus and energy on Sunday night. You know, they get the best schedule, they get the flexible game, and all this and all that. Well, when I did Monday Night Football was the preeminent television carrier for Monday night. I mean, we got the highest ratings every week. It was, you know, I walked into that booth right after Howard Cosell and Don Meredith and guys like that left it. Working with Al and Frank, it was, and I lasted 12 years in a business where nobody's lasted 12 years in that booth since. It was a great run. I couldn't have been. It was a lot of fun.
I got to tell you, I got punished behind Monday Night Football. Watching Monday Night Football, I'm supposed to be in the bed. My mother would come in my room, unplug my black and white TV, and let me tell you something. I used to get in trouble. But talk about some of the teammates that you had the honor of working alongside over the course of that 12-year run.
Well, well, first of all, over the course of my career, I've had the good fortune I've been in the booth. I never worked with a bad play-by-play announcer. I mean, I really did. I mean, I've worked with Lindsey Nelson. I worked with, obviously, Al Michaels for years. I worked with Vern Lundquist. I worked with Dick Enberg. Greg Gumbel and I were partners for years and years. I just was so blessed and that I was in the presence of guys who I remember once I did a game with Ray Scott, who was the old. You're too young to remember that, but he was the voice of the Packers back in the '60s, and I just remember standing next to him and just thinking to myself, "Wow, am I really here?" And on top of it all, somebody's dumb enough to pay me for it. It's a pretty good deal. I've made it this far without ever having a real job.
Talk about your preparation, though. Did you find yourself preparing just as much in the broadcast world as you were when you were studying for football?
Well, it was a different type of preparation, but yes. Al Michaels said something to me before I ever even did a single Monday night game when I first signed. He said, "Dan, you are about to stand behind the biggest bully pulpit in television. Just do me and yourself a favor. It's great to have an opinion, but when you talk about, just make sure you've done your homework and make sure you're right, because it's too valuable and too powerful of a podium to stand up there and just throw something at the wall to see if it sticks." And unfortunately, in television now, there's a lot more of that going on. And Al gave me great advice. I tried my best to know everything I could know before a telecast. And I really tried not to demean anybody by making a silly mistake and saying something that was incorrect.
Radio, Wolverines football, along with your partner in crime, Jim Bradstratter. Talk about that transition of having the opportunity to call Wolverine games.
Well, when I retired from CBS back in 2013, I never had any intention of walking in a broadcast booth ever again. I mean, I was retired. But then the athletic director at Michigan called me and said, "You're going to do Michigan games on radio next year." And I said, "No, I'm not." And he goes, "Oh yeah, you are." And I said, "You've already got a broadcast team." And he told me that one of the guys retired My partner in Michigan, Jim Brandstetter, is actually, he and I were teammates. We played the same position at Michigan. So I've known Jim since I was 19 and he was 18. He was a class behind me at Michigan. So I promised him I'd do it for 3 years. I've done it for 8. This is my last year. Jim and I are retiring together. And I will tell you this. After spending 43 years in the National Football League, for 43 years, I was in an NFL stadium every Sunday for 43 consecutive years. I played for 13 years. I broadcast for 30. I never did a studio show. I always called a game. And I had forgotten, Jameer, I'll tell you, I had forgotten how much fun it can be to be on a college campus on a Saturday afternoon. I have thoroughly enjoyed reconnecting with a lot of my friends in Ann Arbor, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
That's amazing. And they're 7-0. Talk about this unit. Talk about this team. How great is it to see these guys are really, turning that program around?
Well, last year was because of COVID. The Big Ten canceled their season.
Right.
Then they went to start their season, and then they abbreviated their season. And then some teams, Michigan included, we got 6 games in, and then we had an outbreak that ended our year. So it was tough on everybody. It's been a breath of fresh air this year, but opening 7-0, we have 5 games left. Well, guess what? We have to go to Michigan State. They're a top 10 team. We have to go to Penn State, and we also have to play host to that team from Columbus to finish out the year. So of our 5 remaining games, 3 of them are against national powers. So, 7-0 is only 7-0. It can really quickly become 7-1, 7-2, 7-3, and we don't want to do that.
What's so crazy is I caught that 43 years later, you don't even say the team. 43 years later after play, you don't.
Well, first of all, let me get this out right now. They're childish down in Columbus. It's Ohio State. I'll even say the Ohio State University if that makes them happy. No, I didn't mean to imply that I'm one of those guys that never says it. Hey, you know what? No, I know they pride themselves on we're the team up north, and I can just tell you this: Michigan is a beautiful, beautiful state. I see Ohio license plates all over the state of Michigan. If everybody hates Michigan so much, why are they all coming up there to their vacation homes? I don't see anybody with a Michigan plate who vacations in Ohio. We're smarter than that.
Oh, that's great stuff, Dan. That is great stuff. But I have to ask you.
Now, I'll get a nasty letter from somebody's Chamber of Commerce. I love the state of Ohio, but I'm telling you, it's football season, and
right.
all manners are now put on the back shelf. It's dog eat dog. That's
right, and we're having some fun. We're just having some fun talking locker room talk. But
if we can't have fun about this, we're all in the wrong business.
Absolutely. But I have to ask you this. Now that you're in retirement, and congratulations to you and Jim both, will we see you here in Canton, Ohio, 2022 for Enshrinement Week powered by Johnson Controls?
Yes, I will definitely be there. And I'm actually going to come beforehand. I've got some grandchildren that have never seen the hall. And sometime in March or April, I'm going to get my whole family together and we're going to come to town. And I still have a lot of friends there that I went to high school with. So, yes, I'll be making a visit sometime in the spring. But
I got to tell you,
I'll definitely be there for enshrinement.
Awesome. I got to tell you, we were George Verse and I, our chief operating officer, were there to celebrate your excellence at Michigan for your Ford Hometown Hall of Fame event. And that was great. We had a great time there. And
I think I was the first one, wasn't I?
You were the first one. You were the first one.
You know, you guys cashed in a favor, and I took you to the bank. I took you to Michigan, and they were great about it, weren't they?
Oh,
I mean,
it was it was great. It was a phenomenal time.
And it's a wonderful program.
It is.
And I was honored to help kick it off. And it's still going strong, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. It really is.
Deal.
And we want to thank you for that. We want to thank you for your time and giving us the time to catch up with you. Well, that's going to do it for us right here on The Mission. For Dan Dierdorf, I'm Jameer Howerton. We'll see you next time.
This is a presentation of the Pro Football Hall of Fame.